darlings. Welcome back to my Bookstagram. Welcome to another video. This one is going to be a little bit more of a controversial video. I wouldn't say controversial, but I may be saying things that some of you may not like to hear. So just as a warning, I am not being malicious. I am not attacking you for liking these books. I am not coming for you. I'm not saying you've got bad taste or anything. But these are the books that I DNF'd this year. Well, not this year, but last year of 2024. Some of these books I've been reading are longer than a year and I just couldn't get into, or I just weren't right at the time. I have 6 books I just couldn't finish, and for different reasons. And yeah, let's just jump straight into these. First book I will talk about was The Shuddering by Anya Alborn. So this follows a group, from what I remember, a group of friends that go to a log cabin, as I think one of the friends' parents owns it or something and he wants to sell it. So they're going for one last big hurrah. But they've went in the middle of winter when the snow is just thick and there's some sort of creature outside just completely attacking all the locals, and it's out for blood. For me, I just couldn't like any of the characters, and I got pretty far in this book, which was so sad. And let me have a little look how far. So it is 283 pages and I got to 174, so I was so close to finishing this. I just didn't, from what I remember, I just didn't like the characters. They were so just one-dimensional, they were very unlikable. I just couldn't get into it. To be fair, there was a lot of gory, like from what I remember. Like things like, let's read this. The snow between them, and there was this girl cracked open like a gourd. Steam rising from her exploded entrails. Something in his brain clicked, identifying her. But I won't say the name because obviously if you do want to read this, you don't want to know who that's about. Like, it is so, it was so brutal and it was so gory and there was things and the building was great, but I just didn't like the characters. And to me, if you don't like the characters, like the whole point of these like gory, like murdery books is that you want to be rooting for the people that are against this monster and you want them to live. I just didn't care. You know, I was waiting, praying for them to get murdered and absolutely annihilated by this monster, and I just couldn't keep up with it. It wasn't for me, which is so sad because I heard so much about Anya Alborn saying how good she is, and I did like everything else about this book. I loved the gore factor, I loved the tension, I loved the story, I loved the idea. I just hated the characters. So would I try this again? Yes, I would give it one more shot. If I still can't get into it, this is going from my library and I will never be looking at this book again. The second book, let's go with this one. So this book I have been reading for over the year. It's been a while now. And that was Stephen King's Salem's Lot. So I heard so much about this book. Like, I have never read this. This is my first time ever reading Salem's Lot. And I just went into this as pretty much blind. You know, I knew everyone raved about it, said it was one of his best works next to Pet Sematary. And I was like, okay, I need to read this. I was like, because I have read Pet Sematary many years ago. So I don't remember a lot of it, but I remember really enjoying it. So I was like, if people are saying this is as good as Pet Sematary, I need to read this. And I have made a pretty good chunk. Like, I'm on chapter 13 on page 414. And it was just slow. Like, I know Stephen King is like really good at world building and making you really understand the lore and understand the world that he's placed. But this just bored me so much, like to the point where I dread picking this up. And I think I have only just hit where the vampires come into this, because everyone knows Salem's Lot for vampires, and that's over halfway into this book. Like, need I say more? Do you know what I mean? And like, Stephen King's known for like hefty books, and this isn't even that big of a book, but to make it halfway before meeting the bloody gory vampire is just insane. So I do want to pick this back up. I would have to start it fresh because it has been a good couple of months, so I don't really remember much. So I will have to definitely start this again, because I just think maybe it was me at the time. It was just not something for me at that moment in time. Maybe my head was a little bit chocker or something. So I do want to give this another go before I completely cast it out. I'm scared because now I know I have to wait so long, whereas the first time I was just like, oh my god, first time, whereas now I actually know a little bit more of what I'm expecting in this book. So I might like it a little bit more now I know what to expect. But what did you think of this book? I know a lot of you guys love this. So please either tell me what you loved about it. If you hate this book, let me know. And if you absolutely adore this book, give me some motivation and give me some courage to finish this book, because it was hard. I have to hear the noise in this room. Okay, Ghosty. It's scary that I've just asked for motivation and then there's a noise. No, thank you, Mr. Ghosty, not from you. This room, like, just to let you know. So behind this wall, I have like a built-in wardrobe. And this was my friend's room when she was younger, and she said she used to see things at the bottom of her bed, which I didn't find out till a lot later on. When I came home one night, my bed was facing down here, and where I'm sitting right now, no word of a lie, I seen a fucking creature thing like this at the bottom of the bed, and I panicked. Spoke to my friend about it, and yeah, this room is definitely haunted. It's the coldest room in the house. There's a lot of things that happen in this room. Right, calm down, please. None of that. Move on. Carrying on. So the next book that I just couldn't get into, and that was Intercepts by T.J. Payne. The idea of this book absolutely drew me in. It was like the government experimenting on humans to see if inflicting pain upon people, can it cause them to do such things and give them special abilities. And this was brutal. Like, it was really brutal. It's definitely a horror novel for starters, but I just felt like it was taking too long to get into anything. I didn't like the characters. I thought them very bland and basic and very just set in their way, so when these things start happening, I'm not really rooting for them to survive. I'm like, go on, kill them. Do it. Go on, I'd love to read it. Give me something exciting to read. And that was this. And I don't know if it, like, again, if it was just my head at the time. Like, I am definitely going to finish some of these books. Like, these aren't bad books. I'm not saying I didn't finish them because they were bad. I just didn't finish them because either it just wasn't for me at that time, and I don't give something just a one chance and then throw it out. I give it multiple goes, because sometimes I think it depends on what's going on in your life right there and then can affect your reading. Like, I know when I was reading this, my head was up the wall. I was so stressed out, so I think that impacted my reading experience a little bit. So I do definitely want to try to get back into this, because I have had this in my TBR for the longest of time. I've had this in my TBR since like 2023, and I mean like the beginning of 2023, so it's been in my TBR for like 2 years. Left feeling let down over this, and I don't know many people who have actually read this. I don't see many reviews. I know it's definitely not one of the most popular books that I have seen or talked about. Another book I never hear anyone speaking of, and that is The Secret of Anatomy by Mark Morris. This book is more of like a fantasy horror book, I'd say, and it follows like a cult, if I remember correctly. And it was I'm really enjoying this, but I just think because this book was, when was this published? 1995. So this is 95, 25, 30 years old. So I'm not saying it's bad or anything because it's 30 years old. I'm just saying it is a small book, like, compared to, like, that's the average book size. Like, it's very, like, it's small this way. And I have bad eyesight. I think as well as when I was reading this, I think my glasses were busted up at that time, so that might have also impacted my reading experience. But I really enjoyed this, like the way that the magic worked in this book and the shape shifting, and it was so good. I just think at that time I didn't have my glasses, so I couldn't finish it. And I got quite a good chunk in. I got like 19 chapters in, and that's 153 pages. So I made a good little chunk in this book, and I don't even remember reading it that long. But I think at the time I was just like, I was reading multiple books, and I think that's how a lot of these ended up getting DNF'd, is because at the time I was reading multiple books at once, trying to fit everything in and trying to get reviews out for Bookstagram and trying to get content. So I was trying to read as much as I physically could as possible. And obviously when you're doing something like that, it's more like, I'm going to pick the popular books that were obviously at the time popular, to get more interactions and get more people involved and get those likes and those follows. And that was something that I have completely stopped this year. I actually stopped doing that about halfway through last year, because I was just like, at that time I was reading all the big popular books. I was constantly buying books to stay with the popular books, and I didn't like a lot of them, and it put me in a really bad mood. It left me not want to read as much as I wanted to, because I was like, I was just so let down, going, well, everyone's raving about this book and I absolutely can't bear it. It's so bad. So this year I have said I am just reading the books I want to read. I'm not doing any of this for clout. I'm not following, chasing. I'm not doing all this just to get a few likes, a few subscribers, a few comments. So I am just reading the things that I want to read from now on. And if I do see a book that is popular, that is new, and that people are talking about, and I do want to read it, I will pick it up and I will read it. But I am not chasing it anymore. And I think that's another reason why this got left behind, because at the time I think there was like 5 or 6 books that I was like having to throw out like this, and this just sadly got left behind. And I do remember really enjoying it. It was definitely something original that I've never actually read before in another book. So I'm definitely going to be checking this out. Mark Morris, I promise you, The Secrets of Anatomy, you will be getting read very soon. And the next book, right, is a book I just couldn't get into. And I think as well, this was another book I was reading around the same time that I was reading Secret of Anatomy and a few other things. And that was The Ruins by Scott Smith. Personally for me, I think the reason why is there is no chapters in this book. Like, I loved the sense of dread. I loved the characters. I loved everything. I loved the gore of this book. I loved it. It was so good. But for me, because it had no chapters, I found it very hard to put it down and pick it back up. Because I am someone, like, if I am reading, I do read overnight mainly. So I like to be able to read like however many chapters I feel, but I will finish on the next chapter, put my bookmark in and call it there. You can't do that with this book. It's so hard to do that with this book because there is no chapters. And that was something I never heard not one person say. And I had seen so many people rave about this book. And I had never read this book before. I loved the movie. The movie was so good. So I thought, let's get into the book. But out of all the reviews I've seen, out of everybody recommending this book to me, no one had mentioned that there was no chapters in it. So when it came and I was like, oh my God, yeah. And I started reading, I was like, why can't I stop? I was like, where's the chapters? I can't stop here. I can't stop there. I was like, it just made it very difficult to be able to enjoy for me. So now I know that I will definitely go back into it. I didn't make it very far. I think I made it 104 pages or 105 pages in. But what I did read, I really did enjoy. And I know everybody absolutely raves about this book, so I will be going back to this book very soon. The final book that I DNF'd this year, and I mean, this was very recent as well. This wasn't very long ago. I think this was only in October that I DNF'd this, and I made it a good chunk. I'd say about 50%, just under 50% through. The Troop by Nick Cutter. This book was gory, it was intense, it was enjoyable, but I don't think it was what I was looking for at that time, because at that time I had so many books I was trying to get through for October. As obviously you can guess, October and like September is a really good month for like my channel or for my Bookstagram, because that's when people are really looking for those reviews and those recommendations for horror books or thriller books and a little bit more of the creepy and the strange. So I do really well at those months, and then throughout the other months, like it trickles down. So I was trying to get up as many as I could and try and get those followers to stay and entice them through reading more and picking up those big popular books like The Troop. And I just couldn't get into it. I don't know why, because I do enjoy it. I did enjoy this book. I enjoyed his writing style. I like the premise of the book. I like the feeling of like constant dread and panic that these groups of kids were feeling. But I just couldn't grip with it. It was just, I couldn't even tell you what it was. It was just something about it just didn't sit right with me. But the one thing I did like about this was the format of this. So it'd be like a chapter or something, and then it'll talk about an evidence log, and that'd be like a lab journal or a journal entry or a case file, and or an interview. But it wouldn't name with like this. I think it was one was with like the person who helped invent the thing that's in this book. And I think another one might be a survivor, if I remember correctly. I don't know if anyone did survive. I didn't get that far. I remember getting as far as it was meant to be the day they got her, went to come home, and no one showed up. So that's as far as I got with this, but I will definitely be trying this again, because I have heard so many people rave about this book, saying how gruesome it is and how like over the top it is and how petrifying it is, and that's something that I absolutely do love. I'm so sorry if you can hear my dogs going. There's just been a massive firework. That I do love that aspect. I love horror. I love body horror. I love isolation feeling. I love all of that. Obviously, this is very trigger heavy. I know there's a lot of animal cruelty. There's a lot of things, a lot of body horror and things in this that are involved within this book. Like, please, with all of these books, please, always with horror, even thriller, check your trigger warnings. Because it's not up to me, it's not my job to tell you about these trigger warnings and these things in there that I wouldn't even think are trigger warnings to some people, but they are. So please do, it is your responsibility to your own mental health to check your trigger warnings. Best way to do that is basically Google the book and put at the end of it trigger warnings. It's something I never do, personally, because I don't really get triggered by things like that. I think there's only ever been one book that I was like, oh my god, and that was Pen Pal by Death and Auerbach. That made me very paranoid, like to the point where I was looking outside my window thinking someone was here. But other than that, I've never had a book really badly affect me, and I actually tell a lie, The Girl Next Door actually really did affect me. I remember sobbing my eyes out, and I still think about that, and I shiver at the thought of that book, which is obviously on. That was one of the top reads of 2024. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today for all my books that I DNF'd this year. There was quite a few. There's probably more. I know I did Puzzle House, Duncan Colston, I think. That book was just boring as hell. I do not recommend that book. I thought going into it, I was like, this is meant to be like Saw meets Escape Room. And the idea of the book was so good. Like, I absolutely loved it. But it was just so boring. It was so predictable. Like, you knew what was going to happen. You knew who was going to die. It was so bad. Like, that was a major letdown for me. And there's probably many other books that... and most of the books I do DNF are on Kindle. Because obviously I do have a Kindle. And then most of them are on Kindle Limited that people have recommended for me to read. And then I read them, I get so far, and I'm like, this is bad. So I don't really have good experiences when it comes to the Kindle. I do mainly have better experiences during physical copies of these books. On that note, have you read any of these books? If so, let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And please give me some motivation to try and finish one of these, or at least 4 of these for this year. And let's see how we go with that. And what books did you DNF this year? Well, last year. Jesus, I've got to get used to saying that. Last year. So what books did you DNF during 2024? Please let me know in the comment section down below. And on that note, thank you so much for joining me today. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule to sit here with me talking crap about books that I just didn't like. But thank you so much for joining me. I shall see you in the next video, my ookie spooky bookies. Bye.